Hello and welcome to another Make a Code Monday video. In today's video, we're going to try to use the web-based, block-based editor Thunkable to make an app for our mobile device. In particular, I want to make a dice roll app. This is an app that you might use if you play a tabletop game or something like that, and you need to get a number from 1 to 6, and you would normally roll a dice to do that, but if you wanted to do it on your phone, here's an example of the app that we've made for that purpose, where you press the little roll button, boop, and then a new numbered die appears on the screen. And so it's a pretty easy app to make. It brings up some new concepts that we'll explore in Thunkable that we haven't addressed yet. And yeah, it's always just fun to press a button, right? And make something happen, roll a dice. And if you want to see how this all works and you want to make it your own, you can head to thunkable.com where you can make a free account and get started making your own apps for your smartphone. And so I'm going to log in. I'm already signed in, so it's going to bring me to where I want to be. And once you've done the same, or if you're doing the same, we're just going to create a new app. Just like in the last video, we're going to try out the new interface because we don't want to bother learning anything old. And of course, we'll give our project a good name. Dice roll. And click Create. So as always, we start off with a blank screen and we have to do all the work to make the app happen, for the most part. To get things started, I always like to start with the big old button. So I'm going to drag the button component into our interface. This is one of those situations where, yeah, of course, we need a big button. There's only one thing to do in the app, roll a die. So we have a big button there. And in the top right-hand corner, just like the last video, there's the text, which represents the name the component will have in the editor. I always think it's a good idea to give that a very illustrative name, a very descriptive name. So I've called that the roll button. And then the text the user actually sees is here under text. And so we can be a little more fun with that one. Roll. As always, we have this big old button. Better make that font bold. Better make it big to really invite our user to roll. We can change the background color this time if you like. Not to white, probably, because the text is currently white. But maybe something fun, sure. Anyway, that's just an example. You can change the background color, and you can change a picture if you want there, and also all other kind of cool stuff. Raised. Don't know what raised does. So what we want to do is press that button and have something happen. We want to change the image on the screen of the dice. And so, the first question is, where do we get all those images from? Well, the good news is we can find those images online in a royalty-free way. And so if you head to commons.wikimedia.org, you can search for all sorts of royalty-free images. You do need to use, in most cases, attribution if you're using some of these images. So make sure you attribute where you get the images from in the credits section of your app, perhaps, if you're making this a real app. For us right now, we searched dice. We got some cool dice images, and there's these nice, big, bold, 1 through 6 dice images that we can use. If you want to use an image like this in your app, we're going to click through, and then we see that here you can download it in some fixed resolutions as a PNG image. So, just right-click on the one you want and click Save Link As. That would let you save, an image to your hard drive of a dice. I've already done that. I've done that already. And so this is what my sort of directory structure looks like for my project. I have all my dice images already downloaded. And I have named them very short names because we're going to enter those names into the code. And so we want to keep it concise and easy for us to type and all that. So, long story short, I got some images from the internet. They look like images of dice. The numbers 1 to 6 are printed on them. You can find whatever images you like. If you're making some other sort of game where you press a button and a random image appears, it could be any image. Here are my dice. And so that means we need to go back into our code editor and we're going to add some assets. And so in the interface here in Thunkable, the far left kind of small little vertical column here has the designer where we currently are, data, which we're not going to deal with right now, and then assets. And so we can click on assets and where it will let me choose a file or drag a file. Yeah, I can drag a file into there. I can click all my files, all my image files, and just kind of plop it there. And so thank you for all the notifications, Thunkable. So all our images were added successfully, which is great. All our dice are there, which means we're going to go back into the designer and plop in an image. The fun thing, again, by varying definitions of fun, is we're going to start off with an image here, but we're not going to do anything with it yet. The image that we have placed here is a placeholder for what the code will determine is the image we're actually going to see in the app. And so the image is there for later as a component. We're going to name this so it shows up in our code editor in a logical way. So I'm going to say this is our dice image. Again, of course, you may have an app with 100 images, 20 images, whatever it might be. Whenever it gets more than 3, you really want to name your components. The picture right now, I'm not going to set. We could set it to one of those manually right now. That's not what we're into because we want to make sure that it shows up there randomly when the player rolls a dice. And in order to do that, we are going to switch to the blocks. So, at the top bar here, click the blocks button, and we will enter our code editing interface. Everything in Thunkable happens as part of, say, an event, and the event that we're dealing with right now is our roll button. Whenever you click that button, what happens when you click the roll button? Well, this is where things get even more exciting, more fun. We're going to choose from our images randomly, and then we're going to set that image to be the image placeholder that we had set up in the design tab. So, we'll start maybe left to right this time. We have our dice image here, and we're going to set our dice image's picture to something. The default there is the D1 image, the dice 1. That is a little limiting. We don't want it to be just that, but we can use this as an opportunity just to kind of preview our app in the web browser. So if I click web preview, we can just see what that looks like. Roll. Pretty good. The image looks a little compressed, or maybe that's just the way the image is. We can come back to that later. But in any case, roll, and it works. We see our giant dice image there. It looks great. I like it. I'm a fan. In case I am compressing it, I'm just going to stretch that down a bit to give it a little more room. And the picture resize mode, maybe contain, will be more appealing. So let's press play there again. And then we can roll our dice. A little better. It looks like the way it's represented as a graphic, less squished. Anyway, we press roll, an image shows up. It's the number 1. So it's a loaded dice right now, you can say. We already know the outcome, but it works. And that's what we want there for sure. So back to blocks. Set dice images picture to something else. If you're thinking about maybe experiences you've had with other block-based editors, a lot of the randomness tools are under the math drawer. That's true here as well, but Thunkable has a block kind of purpose-built for our issue under the lists drawer. So under the core section here, we're going to go into lists, and we're going to pick a random item of a list, and the list is something we're going to fill in. And so by plopping this here, we have the opportunity to give us some options and then have it automatically choose a random one for us. So, what are we doing? We need to put in the file names, the complete file names of our dice images. So that's why I kept them short, because we would have to type them in here. So d1.png. I'm just going to copy the .png. D2. And then under, this is kind of the fun thing. So it automatically gave us a list with 2 items. To add items on the list, we click the little gear here and just keep on plopping in items. And it gives us more spaces there. More and more spaces. Plop. And then we can close that little menu by tapping the gear. So I can just right click and duplicate these text boxes just for the purpose of filling in something here. This is a standard text block. If you wanted to get it from scratch, it's under text here. So if you ever need a block with quotation marks, it's in the text area. And so I'm going to fill these in, and then we'll loop back around to kind of what we're doing here with this list. So the list is a pretty common tool in programming. It's a data structure which can include, depending on your programming language, can include any number of items of perhaps different types. Here we're storing in the list 6 different strings of text, because what the dice image block over here wants is the sort of trail towards an image that it can show. All these images are things that we've just uploaded in the design tab. They're using the assets section. And so the name here doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to point to like the file path where this is stored in your app or anything kind of serious like that. It just has to reference the file by name. And so these are the file names. They're in a list. We're going to choose a random item of that list every time we click that roll button. And so if I click the web preview button here, I can press roll, shows the number 3, shows the number 6, shows the number 3, shows the number 6, shows the number 4. So pretty random, pretty good dice roll app. Not too bad, not too bad. For those instances where I press the roll button and the same image appears twice, it looks like nothing's happening. And so keep that in mind. You know, randomness is random. You could get the same one in a row a few times. But by and large, our app works. And so that means we can start to make it a little more user-friendly. We can make it a little more fun in different ways. When you click the roll button, the dice image appears, which is great. But if you notice, when our app starts, it's just a blank screen. You know, nothing really happens. If we really care about the experience of our users, maybe, just maybe, wouldn't it be better if the app just automatically rolled the dice for us as soon as we open the app? I mean, we're going to assume that's what the user wants to do if they're opening a dice roll app, right? So this is a good opportunity to make the user's life easier and a good opportunity for us to introduce a new concept or two. So in Thunkable, you might be able to tell that the interface for the user is arranged in screens. You can have multiple screens. So you could have a screen that just welcomes your user to the app. We're working on screen 1. We're going to keep this to one screen. And the screen 1 component itself is exposed here. So we can say when screen 1 opens, so as soon as the user gets to screen 1, we can roll the dice again. And so I can duplicate this whole section here, and just move it over there. But one of the terms in programming you might hear when you're learning about coding for the first time is this idea of dry, D-R-Y, don't repeat yourself. If a bug is introduced in one section of your code and you copy and pasted it half dozen times in other parts of your code, that just means instead of having one bug, you have a half dozen bugs for every time you copy and pasted the bug-filled version of the code. So to get around issues like that, where we don't want to just copy and paste code we're reusing, we can put that useful code inside a function. And then the function is moved around all throughout your app. And so if a problem comes up in the original version of your code, you just have to change that original version. You don't have to change every other instance of your code. So that's the idea anyway. That's what we want to do. To make that happen, we will go to the sidebar here and click on functions. So we want our function to do something, which is great. So we're going to take that and plop it over there. The function here is, or the do something is name, is, sorry, the do something is the name of the function. So let's call that function roll, because the thing we want to do is roll, and we can put all this code into the function. Whoopsie. So now when you roll that dice by clicking the button, we'll do our function by calling the function. And so under functions, our roll function has magically appeared, and we can plop that into there. And then under functions, again, we can pop that into there. Ha ha ha. So one block of code, one function with two different sort of events which trigger them. So let's test this out on our device instead of just the web preview. To do the device testing, you need to get a code from the app. And so if I click this button here, we have the opportunity to enter a code. Where does that code come from? The code comes from the Thunkable Live app. So if you haven't already installed the Thunkable Live app onto your smartphone, go ahead and do that whenever you like. And then we can use that to live test the app you're designing on your device. And so I would tap on email sign-in, because that's how I made my account. So it shows me this little code, which will be used to kind of tie the web-based editor to the instance running on my mobile phone. And so in the web browser, I'm going to type in that super fun code. Whoops, the code changed on the fly because I had it open too long. Type in the real code. So, here the app is running on our actual phone that we designed, which is pretty cool, right? Like, how much cooler does it get than that? Not much cooler. And so we can press roll on the phone. It shows up there, rolling those dice, getting some numbers, playing the game that we're playing, tabletop game. And so that's basically it for what I wanted to show you today. Obviously, there's some big advancements that you can do. You can add some sound effects so that every time the dice rolls, there's a roll sound perhaps. You can, again, have a little toggle that changes it from a 6-sided die to like a 20-sided die, if that's the kind of game you're playing. Either way, I sure hope you take on the challenge to try to make your own app in Thunkable, and you share your results with us. So have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.